Hey, it's Double Krown here. So, I'm going to continue my series of New Age videos, and this one is going to be about regime change. So, what we see happening is the West is constantly trying to install new regimes in a lot of different countries, typically in the Middle East. So we've had Saddam Hussein ousted. We've now got bombing happening in Syria, and the West wants to get rid of Bashar al-Assad. So this idea of regime change, where does that come from? Why is the West constantly trying to change the regimes? What's the benefit? Ostensibly, the reasons given are things like, well, human rights, that Saddam Hussein was a tyrant, blah blah blah, that Assad is a tyrant, that he is terrible to his own people. And I don't know the details. I don't know exactly what they've done. Maybe they are bad people, but nevertheless, if you have a bad dictator, why would you necessarily go in there and try and regime change that country? My view is that Syria, Iraq, they are a long, long way away. And why on earth would you want to go there and install a regime? So you've got to start thinking about, well, what's the benefit for the West of a regime change? Why is the West doing this? Surely, just because somebody's a bad man doesn't mean you just go in there and then decide what's what for that country. It just seems a bit odd. So what seems to be happening here is, well, if we look at a good example is if we look at the United States. Now, the United States is in the process of picking candidates for the Democrat and the Republican parties. Now, the United States has a two-party system, a bit like the UK. In the UK, we have Labour and we have the Conservatives. Essentially a two-party system, although there are smaller parties and independent candidates as well. And the same thing happens in the United States. So we've got the Democrats and the Republicans. Now, what we've seen in the United States is we're seeing that the parties in the United States, like the Republican Party, we've had Bushes in power. So first we had Bush Senior, and then we had Bush Junior, George W. Bush, and we've also had the Clintons. So we had Bill Clinton, and now, of course, we've got Hillary Clinton trying to get the candidacy for the Democratic Party. So if we look at the United States, it seems odd that the same families are getting in again and again and again. We're seeing the Bushes getting in, and now, of course, we've got Jeb Bush in the in the battle as well for the Republican candidacy. So if he was to get in, that would make three Bushes. Now, it just seems odd that a country as big as the United States would just have one Bush after another, or that it would have one Clinton after another as the leader. So, if we look at regime change in the United States, for example, what we'd really be saying is that in the United States, we'd want a candidate who was not from the traditional parties, or wasn't from the Bush family, or wasn't from the Clinton family. Now, we can already see that it's so hard to for any other candidates to stand a chance, because of course the Bushes are financially backed, and similarly the Clintons are financially backed. They have all the big donors. They are the powerful candidates, and anybody else trying to get in is really, really struggling. So what we've got is a guy like Donald Trump coming in there, and Donald Trump is unusual in the sense that he has he said that he doesn't want any donations. He's saying to all the big donors, I don't want your money, which is a great first step to get away from this kind of two-party system. Of course, he is still going to be representing the Republican Party, but nevertheless, he's getting people away from the idea of, getting people away from voting for the Bushes and voting for the Clintons. Now, whether Donald Trump is successful in getting the Republican Party nomination is yet to be seen. If he does it, that would be an amazing achievement. But it just shows you how hard it is to have regime change in a country like the United States, where you have this two-party system. You've got the Democrats and you've got the Republicans, and you've got the same candidates getting all the big money. It's very, very hard for anybody else to stand a chance of getting in there. And I think if you look at what is happening in the United States and what is happening in politics there, and the rise of Donald Trump, somebody who's saying, look, I don't want your money, I've got my own money, and I'm going to spend that on trying to become the next president. When you've got somebody like that, it just shows you how hard it is for anybody else to get a look in. Donald Trump is in a very fortunate position to even have the sort of money that is required. And even Donald Trump, for all his billions, he is having to run this campaign, this presidential campaign, on a shoestring budget. So that brings us to the Middle East, Iraq, Syria, Libya, etc., possibly in the future even Iran. Why would they want to have a regime change there? Now, if you take a look at somebody like Saddam Hussein, now Saddam Hussein is generally considered a bit of a dictator. I think he was in power of Iraq for a long, long time. It's not like in the West where, you have a president for 4 or 5 years and then, there's an election. Saddam Hussein was in charge of Iraq for many, many years. I think it was something like 15, maybe 19 years. I'm not sure. And I'm not sure if they had proper elections or anything like that. So he was an out-and-out dictator. But nevertheless, why would you want to regime change him? And the reason I suggest is that once you get rid of somebody like Saddam Hussein, now Saddam Hussein has been in power for a very long time. He is considered a dictator. He may not be following, he may not be playing the game the way the globalists and the people in power, the hidden hand, the people who are providing the money to the candidates, providing the big donations to the Bushes, providing the big donations to the Clintons. This hidden hand that's providing these donations, somebody like Saddam Hussein may not be playing their game. Therefore, they are going to get very upset. Saddam Hussein is not, is not under the influence of this hidden hand. He is not playing ball, if you like. Similarly with Assad. Assad is somebody who might not be influenced by the hidden hand. He's not influenced by these big donors. And of course these Middle Eastern countries have access to this oil, which means that they might have a degree of um, financial security, etc., that we don't see in other countries. It gives them a certain degree of clout. Now, once you get rid of somebody like Saddam Hussein, like Assad, once you get rid of those people, you can then install your own system. You can install your own idea of democracy. You can install a two-party system, if you like. And you can install this idea of donations and donors. And before long, once you've installed this system, and key to that is installing a centralized bank. So if you've got a centralized bank in one of these countries, and it's providing the big loans, and it soon puts that country into debt. And before you know it, there'll only be certain candidates in that country who will be able to stand for election. And of course, they'll be vetted, scrutinized, checked over, and as long as they are willing to comply with the hidden hand, and as long as they are willing to play ball, and as long as they are willing to do as they are told, they will stand a chance of becoming the leader of that country, and they will be able to stand in what ostensibly appears to be a democratic system that has been installed into the country. So that is essentially why regime change seems to be so important for the West, because once they've installed their idea, the West's idea of democracy into these countries, into Iraq, into Syria, it will be very, very hard ever again for Iraq to be able to put somebody who doesn't fit the mold of the hidden hand, who doesn't play ball with the hidden hand. It will be very hard for the people of Iraq to choose their own leader. It will be very hard for the people of Syria to install their own leader. And of course, nobody will have access to any money anymore, because there'll be a centralized bank, because the big loans will be issued by the centralized bank, and before you know it, the country will be in debt. It will then be impossible for those countries to ever get their own leader back into power. And that is the idea of regime change. That is why it's so important for the West to install this into every single country in the world, because before long, it means that the financial clout, the centralized banks, the bankers are then controlling the world. And that seems to be the key to this, and that seems to be what's going on. And that's why the West and the Western countries, Europe, the United States, this hidden hand that is operating both the United States and Europe, this hidden hand, that's why it's so eager for regime change. And they'd be happy for regime changes in places like Russia. They would be happy for regime change in places like China, so they can install this idea of this what appears ostensibly to be democratic, to install some sort of democratic system into Russia, to install some sort of democratic system into North Korea, to install some democratic system into China, and that way they can always control the leaders. And once they've installed the centralized banks as well into those countries, they can then always control the leader. They can always choose the candidates. They can always donate to the candidates of their choice, just like we see in the United States. And this is how it works. This is how I suggest it works. So, regime change, is that what is happening? Is that why the West is so eager for regime change? Because, of course, the reasons given are essentially that, Saddam Hussein was a terrible man. He killed his own people. That Assad is a terrible man. He kills his own people. Now, I don't know what those people have done. I don't have any data. Maybe they are bad people. But even if they are bad people, it seems kind of sensible that the people of Syria should deal with the problems of Syria. And the people of Iraq should deal with the problems of Iraq. And if the people of Syria don't like their leader, they should be the ones trying to get rid of him. But, of course, that's not what we see. What we see is the West comes in and the West installs their version of democracy into these countries. So, thanks for listening. And if you agree, please leave your comments below. If you disagree, again, hit the dislike button or the like button, whatever is your choice. But please comment down below. Thanks for listening. That was Double Krown, over and out.